On November 21st, 2025, Rio de Janeiro awoke to more than just humidity. A sense of dread gripped the city. The air was thick, not only with the promise of another sweltering day, but with a tension that seemed to seep into every street and alleyway. For many, it was a morning like any other, but for those living in the shadow of Salgueiro, something felt different, an unspoken warning that trouble was coming. Before the first rays of sunlight touched the city, the favela of Salgueiro was already under siege. The silence of dawn was broken by the distant rumble of engines and the heavy footsteps of boots on concrete. Helicopter blades and sirens shattered the morning, signaling not rescue, but retribution. The sky above Salgueiro buzzed with the relentless whir of rotors, as if the city itself was under attack from above. For Salgueiro's residents, this was a familiar terror. War was coming to their doorstep. Mothers clutched their children, neighbors whispered warnings, and everyone waited for the first shots to ring out. The day's routine, children getting ready for school, coffee brewing, was obliterated by the thunder of armored vehicles. Toys lay abandoned, breakfast left untouched as families scrambled for safety. This was no patrol, it was an invasion. Streets that once echoed with laughter now trembled under the weight of boots and gunmetal. The state's security forces had come to dismantle the Comando Vermelho, Brazil's most feared criminal organization. Their mission was clear, but the cost would be paid by everyone caught in the crossfire. But in the favela's maze, the line between criminal and civilian vanished. Every shadow could hide a fugitive or a frightened child. Every alley was a potential ambush. Every rooftop a sniper's nest. The favela became a labyrinth of fear, where danger lurked around every corner. As gunfire erupted, the city held its breath. Order was promised, but chaos reigned. The echoes of violence spread far beyond Salgueiro, reaching every home that listened to the news in disbelief. By sunset, Salgueiro would be infamous as the site of Rio's deadliest police raid. The cost was measured not just in casualties, but in shattered lives and broken trust. The Red Dawn had become a day of darkness. For Salgueiro, the scars of that morning would linger long after the smoke had cleared, a grim reminder of a city at war with itself. To understand Salgueiro, you must understand the Comando Vermelho. Born in dictatorship-era prisons, it grew into Brazil's most powerful criminal syndicate, ruling where the state had vanished. Salgueiro is their stronghold, a labyrinth of alleys and stacked homes perfect for defense and impossible for outsiders to control. Here the gang is law, employer, and executioner. The state's authority is a distant memory. Ordinary residents live in constant negotiation, caught between gang rule and police violence. When war comes, it's the people of Salgueiro who pay the price. Operation Trident was designed as a three-pronged assault to decapitate the Red Command's leadership. Months of surveillance led police to believe top gang leaders were meeting in Salgueiro. Over 400 officers, including elite BOP units, prepared for war, not policing. Armored vehicles and helicopters set the stage for a classic pincer movement, trap the targets, overwhelm with firepower. The plan demanded precision, but in Salgueiro's chaos that was a fantasy. Intelligence was shaky, and the risk to civilians immense. As dawn broke, officers became soldiers entering a battlefield where the rules were blurred. The potential for tragedy was enormous. The raid began before dawn. Armored vehicles smashed through barricades, their engines roaring as they advanced, headlights cutting through the thick darkness. The city, still half asleep, was jolted awake by the thunder of metal and the acrid smell of smoke. For the residents of Salgueiro, it was the beginning of a nightmare that would stretch on for hours. Gunfire erupted from rooftops and alleys. The police answered with overwhelming force, bullets ricocheting off concrete and echoing through the narrow streets. The air was thick with tension and the deafening sound of conflict, as both sides fought desperately for control. The favela's defenders, masked and determined, used their intimate knowledge of the labyrinthine alleys to their advantage, drawing police into deadly ambushes. Every corner became a potential trap, every shadow a threat. Helicopters raked the maze below, their spotlights sweeping over rooftops, searching for movement, but their bullets tore indiscriminately through homes as much as gang hideouts, leaving families cowering in fear and walls riddled with holes. What was meant to be a swift, decisive strike devolved into a 10-hour siege, the streets filled with smoke and confusion, as exhausted officers hunkered behind makeshift barricades, waiting for the next burst of violence. As resistance stiffened and officers fell, the operation turned from capture to attrition. The line between hunter and hunted blurred, and the cost of every advance grew heavier. Reports of indiscriminate raids mounted as police stormed homes in search of suspects. The distinction between criminal and bystander faded, and fear spread through the community, leaving many to wonder if anyone was truly safe. By midday, Salgueiro was a war zone. Smoke, gunfire, and civilian casualties everywhere. Emergency responders risked their lives to reach the wounded, dodging bullets as they tried to save whoever they could. The primary targets had vanished into the chaos, leaving the community shattered and streets littered with debris. Shell-shocked residents wandered through the ruins, searching for loved ones and answers. The so-called surgical strike had become a bloody, drawn-out brawl, with neither side willing to yield. The pavement was stained with the cost of violence. The cost, dozens dead, trust destroyed. Grief and anger mingled in the air as families mourned and the community struggled to comprehend the devastation. The ghosts of the Red Command remained at large, their presence haunting the empty streets, a chilling reminder that the cycle of violence was far from over. When the shooting stopped, horror emerged. Residents found bodies in the streets, blood on the steps, and stories of executions, not firefights. Witnesses described police dragging out wounded men and shooting them in cold blood. Allegations of staged crime scenes and summary executions spread quickly. The official story of a heroic battle unraveled. 41 dead, most allegedly gang members, but the community told a different story. Forensic experts found evidence of executions, not chaos. The term massacre echoed from Salgueiro to the world. The raid failed to capture its targets, but succeeded in leaving a legacy of fear and distrust. Officials defended Operation Trident as a necessary war against ruthless criminals. Press conferences showcased seized weapons and praised police bravery. The high death toll was spun as proof of effectiveness, not brutality. Many in Brazil cheered the hardline approach, seeing the police as heroes. But residents, activists, and journalists told a different story, a state-sponsored slaughter. Two irreconcilable narratives emerged, one of heroism, one of massacre. The government's insistence on its version, despite mounting evidence, only deepened outrage. The truth was lost in the chasm between these tales. News of the Salgueiro raid ignited global outrage. International media called it a massacre, not a victory. Human rights groups condemned the operation, demanding independent investigations. The UN highlighted the raid's disproportionate impact on poor black communities, framing it as systemic injustice. Brazil's government faced a diplomatic crisis. Domestic tough talk clashed with international condemnation. Investors grew wary. Tourism suffered, and Brazil's image was tarnished. The world saw Salgueiro not as a triumph over crime, but as a devastating moral failure. The raid became a symbol of everything wrong with Brazil's war on drugs. The raid directly challenged Brazil's Supreme Federal Court, which had restricted police operations in favelas. Operation Trident appeared to violate every safeguard. No clear emergency, no real effort to protect civilians. The result? A constitutional crisis, pitting state security forces against the judiciary. The court demanded accountability, the police and their political backers resisted oversight. The raid became a test of Brazil's democracy. Would the rule of law prevail, or would the gun rule the favelas? The answer remained uncertain as investigations stalled and outrage grew. Salgueiro exposed the deep fracture in Brazilian society over justice and security. Weeks have passed since the raid, And Salguero is silent, but the silence is heavy, thick with grief, fear, and unanswered questions. The air hangs with a tension that never quite dissipates, as if the neighborhood itself is holding its breath, waiting for the next tragedy to unfold. The 43 dead are buried, but their graves are restless, each one a reminder of lives cut short, of families left behind, and of a community still searching for answers. The earth is fresh, the pain even fresher, and the questions echo louder than ever. The gang leaders vanished into the shadows, escaping justice, while the community was left to pick up the pieces. Children no longer play in the streets, and families mourn behind closed doors, haunted by memories of violence and loss. Official investigations move at a glacial pace, hampered by bureaucracy and indifference. Few here expect justice. Impunity has become a bitter fact of life, and trust in the system is all but gone. The raid has only deepened the cycle of violence, fueling both gang recruitment and harsher police tactics. Young men, seeing no future, are drawn into the conflict, while police respond with even greater force, perpetuating a war with no end in sight. Poverty and distrust remain unaddressed. The war continues on the bodies of the poor. Hunger, unemployment, and fear are daily realities, and hope is a rare commodity in these streets. Operation Trident failed its objectives, failed the law, and failed the innocent. Instead of bringing peace, it left behind shattered lives and a community more fractured than before. The dead are now statistics in a brutal history, their names fading into numbers, their stories lost in official reports and news headlines. Salguero's graves ask a haunting question. How many more must die before something truly changes, before justice and peace are more than distant dreams?